So let's talk about getting some more referrals, because this is where a lot of your events are going to come from.
How'd you do that?
I see that success is not something you pursue, it is something you are.
All right, so once you're doing an event, you get hired, you're on stage, you're doing your thing, you wow the crowd. Well, at this point, you know, okay, I need to get some referrals. So how do you get more referrals? How do you get more people saying, oh, we want you to come to our event? How do you do that? And so I'm going to talk about just getting referrals in general, because a lot of my leads now come from a lot of warm leads instead of cold leads. Cold leads, I used to start out by just contacting everybody, and eventually you get to a point where you've been on a lot of stages and you have a lot of business cards, and now it's warm leads. So if you do this right, you can get these people to hire you constantly and consistently. So here's what I do. Well, you got to think in terms of, how do people actually refer business? People don't usually say like, hey, I want to refer you to so-and-so, even though this is what you read about in books. And so what people usually do when they refer business is they tend to tell a story. They say like, oh man, this guy is great. I mean, when I bought my car from him, I mean, the customer service was awesome. It was so great. And so they usually tell a story. So if you can think in terms of what can you do that would create a story, for example, if you just gave them a car, if you're like, hey, hire me, I'll give you a car. Well, I'm sure they would tell a story about that one. And this is why I tend to hang out after an event, and I'll just like perform some stuff for people at the bar, or usually everyone at the event kind of hangs out at the hotel bar. I usually kind of do stuff and I'll talk with people, because this gives them more chances to have a story around you where they can now actually recommend you. So I tend to think in stories and how can you actually create the story inside of their head. And I also look for people who are the most emotional when I'm on a stage. So I really thought about this a long time ago when I was doing the Remax event, and I did this thing on stage, and one lady in the crowd, she was like, shut up. Like she immediately reacted. And so I knew, I was like, okay, I'm gonna get a testimonial from her. And so I tend to look for people who are really emotional in terms of, when I do a presentation, who responds the best. And not just when I'm on stage, but even when I'm off stage, the whole presentation is done for, people come up to me, they start talking to me. I look to see who actually says stuff like, dude, that was mind blown. When someone says that versus, dude, that was good, I usually connect more with the, ooh, that was mind blowing. I connect more with that person because of how emotional they are. So they're much more likely to tell stories, and they're much more likely to refer me, to recommend me, and to book me for another event. So that's what I really look for. And also, before I actually step on a stage, I tend to say something like, well, who else do you know that'd be interested in hiring someone like me? So I'll say this constantly, like not just when I just do the event, but I'll say this before they actually hire me, before they see me. So as they sign the contract, and I'll say like, hey, do you know anyone else? Do you guys have other events? So I'll ask before I ever go to the event. Then when I'm at the event, I'll do things like I'll pull out my iPhone, I'll record a video testimonial, and as I'm recording a video testimonial, I'll start saying things like, oh, so would you recommend Benji Bruce for your event? And then I'll start talking with them about their event, if they have one. Or, I'll just start talking about events as I'm recording them, because it does multiple things. One, I'm actually getting a testimonial. Two, you're kind of putting them in this social pressure situation where you're recording, and they're not going to say, no, I wouldn't recommend him for an event. They're not going to say that. I mean, unless you did a really horrible job, they're not going to say that as you're recording them. They know they're being recorded. So they're almost always going to say, yeah, I would definitely recommend him. And so you're kind of creating this yes state inside of their head to where they're kind of saying, yeah, I would definitely recommend them. So once you say, oh, so when is your next event? Well, like, do you guys plan a lot of it? Are you the person in charge? And when you start saying things like that, well, now you basically open up the conversation. You're much more likely to get the referral. So I tend to do a lot of that. And really, you don't want to just ask for the referral after you get the gig, you always ask for the referral throughout the entire span. So at the very beginning, when they contact you, you get the contract signed, bam, you ask for a referral right there. When you're like right before you go to the event, you ask for a referral. When you're at the event, you ask for a referral. And after the event, you ask for a referral. So that's how you increase your referrals. That's how you just become the bomb diggity in terms of just getting referrals. Just like, what up now, sons of guns?